On the morning of February 3rd, 1984, an average-height mother and father arrived at the hospital for a scheduled C-section. They were excited to meet their second-born child. Immediately following the birth, their newborn girl was taken away for 6 to 8 hours. It was assumed that she was having a cardiac arrest and she wouldn't make it through the night. This adorable newborn was me. Once I was diagnosed with achondroplasia, the most common form of dwarfism on that day, my parents researched everything they possibly could to plan for a fulfilling life for me. The ups and the downs continued when my parents witnessed me endure 8 surgeries over the course of my childhood, and each came with the possible risk of death or paralysis. In all reality, from the early beginnings, most of my needs were similar to any other newborn baby, but the others required those surgeries throughout my childhood. Society is fearful of disability. While many members of the short-statured community don't feel that they have a disability, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed over 30 years ago, protects the rights of people with dwarfism. People living with disabilities are viewed by society as defective. Often people living without disabilities want to ignore us. They want to dismiss us. People living with visible and/or non-visible disabilities are often excluded. Every day, people with disabilities are living that narrative of, you're less than, you're a burden, you're a charity. For the most part, people discount us everywhere we go. And the ways that it's most visible are pointing, staring, and laughing, with the overall assumption that we're just not capable. Children experience it being separated from those who are different. Many people in society project that disability is the problem and therefore treat people with disabilities as defective and that they must be fixed. And I think that's a disturbing point of view. Disabilities aren't the problem. Fear or lack of understanding of what individuals with disabilities have to offer is the problem. The truth is that disability can be an asset to society if only most people without disabilities could step out from behind their fear and see the fact that it was they who were in their way the whole time. People without disabilities fear the future for those who have disabilities, whether it is lack of independence, our inability to get and hold jobs, or our need to constantly rely on others. All of these fears are uninvestigated reasons or excuses to judge people with disabilities. People living without disabilities live with their own fear. Some view the disability and their brain registers pain, just as it does when we watch someone get hurt. They may become afraid that a similar thing will happen to them. It's not the person with the disability so much that scares people without disabilities. It's the unpleasant sensations that this sight provokes. In addition, an unquestioning embrace of political correctness can mean people without disabilities go way too far and bracket all people with disabilities together. Fear and limited expectations can and do prevent some people without disabilities from moving forward academically, professionally, and emotionally. In today's society, there's a conflict of what the people without disabilities think they ought to feel about people with disabilities and the actual emotions they experience. In everyday life, it's likely that everyone encounters people with disabilities. In the United States, the definition of disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. We think that disability is strictly visible, since that's what we see, but according to the United States Census, 1 in 4 people have a disability, and 75% of disabilities are not visible. Here are the statistics. There are 1 billion people with disabilities in the world. We represent the 3rd largest market segment. With families and friends, individuals with disabilities represent a $1 trillion spending market. I want you to be mindful of these statistics since disability is all around us, and if ignored, profitable opportunities are missed. Every day that I choose to leave the comfort of my own home, at least one person whom I encounter reminds me that I'm different. I know that when I leave the house, I'm going to have to deal with being objectified and mocked. Others may point, stare, and laugh. They take photos and videos on their cell phones without my consent. They assume that my short stature relates to the intellect of a kindergarten student. They assume that I can't communicate or have an adult conversation. I personally have experienced emotional bullying, although some people refuse to believe that emotional bullying exists. As an adolescent and as an adult, I've also been left out of social circles. People continue to react negatively towards my dwarfism. Children remain curious with comments like, "Look, there's little mommy." But sometimes a parent points to their child and encourages them to stare at me because I'm different. At the age of 28, a job recruiter said to me, "You're so cute, how did you get here?" I drove there. Someone recently asked my husband and me, "Where do you midgets hang out?" Honestly, wherever you go, we go, and we prefer not to be called midgets. On top of that, when completing everyday tasks, I often hear comments like, "I couldn't do that. My brother has a fear of little people." A former colleague asks, "Are you sure you can attend that event since a lot of people will be there and there's a risk of you getting trampled?" And another colleague who is pregnant stated, "I don't think I could handle having a child who is different." This attitude towards people with disabilities doesn't come from nowhere. It's taught. People with disabilities have historically been portrayed negatively in the media, and that influences how society thinks to treat us. This is still happening today. Most people have not seen a person with dwarfism in their everyday life, and this is where the assumptions lie. On the bright side, when people see us on television as people and not as leprechauns, elves, or any kind of character related to our short stature, they almost feel comfortable. They're more aware we exist, so when they see us on the street, they seem to have a friendlier or just more neutral reaction, and that's all part of the awareness. What all of this amounts to is that we live in a society that is disengaged and missing out on opportunities to learn and grow. Just in case I haven't been clear enough, disability isn't the problem. Fear is the problem, and we all have the ability to overcome that fear. We live in a society that encourages innovation, and people with disabilities are the most innovative people on the planet. Before leaving the house each day, we're tasked to solve more problems than your average person without a disability. That problem-solving ability and mindset can be a tremendous asset in other areas of our lives, including the workplace. For example, getting out of a high bed and ensuring that my feet land properly on the floor, successfully getting up on the toilet without pinching my leg on a loose toilet cover in the process, and reaching the sink to wash my hands, or using a step stool to get my morning iced coffee, along with everything else involved in a morning routine. A person who uses a wheelchair may face different encounters, such as successfully transferring from their bed to their chair to navigating the accessible and inaccessible features of their homes and transportation plans for each day. Instead of the world adapting to us, we adapt to it. The world was not made for us, but we're here to solve the challenges that allow us to adapt to it. Children with disabilities often spend hours being taught how to interact with others. But why don't we spend time teaching people without disabilities how to interact with children with disabilities? Education starts at home, and parents should be taking responsibility for how their children learn to embrace all differences. Allow yourselves and your children to be curious. I constantly tell children and adults that no question is offensive to me, and they often run with it. I rather people ask questions to reduce assumptions. When speaking to school-aged children, some unique questions have included, do your hair and teeth grow the same? Have you ever been approached by a large dog? Where do you find your clothes? Do you drive, and if so, how? Are you married? Are you able to have kids? And if so, will they be little or average height? I'm actually currently pregnant with a baby who is expected to have dwarfism. Do you sometimes react to people based on how you think people will react to you? Absolutely I do. Fear is a product of misunderstanding. I invite everyone, every single one of you, to question your fears. What are you afraid of? Fears are really hard to challenge, and in order to do that, you also have to change some of your behaviors. Create a culture of inclusion. Inclusion means overcoming the fear and intentionally providing access and including people with disabilities in every conversation. Inclusion means planning to build physical, digital, learning, and work environments so that they are usable by a wide range of people regardless of background, age, size, or disability status. While universal design promotes access for individuals with disabilities, it also benefits everyone. After receiving a college degree, I faced several obstacles while trying to enter the workforce as someone with a physical disability. I sent out 1,000 resumes and went on 100 interviews, had 3 temporary job assignments over the course of a year period before even securing my first permanent job. I was facing obstacles that most people without disabilities do not face. In a professional setting, I recommend that you ask questions to reduce assumptions. Offer to serve as a mentor. When posting job opportunities, make sure any potential candidate knows that they can request a reasonable accommodation during any part of the application, interview, or onboarding process. Job candidates with disabilities want to know that they have a fair chance. If someone has to request an accommodation before an offer to make one is made, it can get real awkward real fast. Once someone is chosen for the job, be sure to continue to support them in that role. Offer to serve as a mentor by providing constructive feedback throughout their career and support them if they want to climb the ladder at your company. Choose acceptance. Solve for acceptance. Investigate what your home, school, office, and other communities are doing to create a more inclusive world. Let's all make a promise to reduce our fears and work to build a world where we all achieve positive outcomes for all children and adults alike. A few days after I was born, my average height mother and father and I were discharged from the hospital. As parents of a child with dwarfism, my mother and my father were just looking for support with not much available information back in 1984. It was recommended that we meet with a geneticist in order to learn more. Once we secured an appointment date and time, my parents arrived with me at the hospital where the recommended geneticist worked. We checked in at the front desk and were told to follow the hallway past the signs that say birth defects. Take the elevator to the floor labeled birth defects. Once you get off the elevator, follow the hallway on that floor past another sign that says birth defects. We passed a total of 3 signs that said birth defects before finding our way to the geneticist's office. I hope we can all agree that the word defect carries a negative connotation for any parents of any newborn children. Although the receptionist was doing her job, she was not aware that the terminology used for those signs created additional distress in my parents, who were still trying to understand that their child was going to be okay. After the meeting, my parents sent a letter to the hospital with the hopes that the hospital would change the signs from birth defects to genetics. Fortunately for all patients visiting that geneticist's office after us, my parents' wishes were granted, and the signs were changed. My disability has affected my life, but I've come to love it. I truly believe that I was put on this earth for a reason. I wouldn't know more than half of the important people in my life if I wasn't born this way. My innovative perspective of the world has been influenced by a diverse viewpoint. When people ask me if I had a choice, would I choose to be a little person in another life? I always answer by saying that I would still choose to be a little person, but I would change the way that people react to my physical disability. I continue to believe that despite what others may say, no goal or dream of mine is impossible. Disability does not discriminate. Anyone can acquire a disability at any point in their life. It's possible to see someone beyond their disability. Only through interaction with the unfamiliar will become familiar. All people want the same things: to be treated with kindness, to feel safe and included. We all want to be treated the same. No matter our abilities, we want to be happy. Facing your own fear will allow you to access the best people in the world. And that is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.